Why, look at that! It's Kapow time once again!
Look at what? You've written Kapow time on your wrist.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Welcome to Kapow, guys. I'm Sonia.
And I'm Al, and here we are again at Kings Comics. Today we're going to be looking at Clone and Saucer Country.
Yes, and Ray will be along in a few minutes to take a look at one of your favourite series, Venture Brothers.
And he'd better give it a buy.
Don't threaten Ray.
Really better. Also, we are going to be announcing our big competition.
Oh, yes!
Yes.
I forgot about that.
So
that's amazing.
That's going to be at the end, so stick around for that.
Yes, but first we're going to do a review of number 13. Ooh. Well, here we are once again in a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
No, it sounds funny to say, doesn't it? But post-apocalyptic wastelands have actually gotten quite common in comics over the last few years.
Yeah, maybe it's a manifestation of mankind's fear that we will inevitably destroy ourselves.
Yeah, either that or it's just so the artist doesn't have to draw so many buildings. But either way, I think they have become a common backdrop for comics, and that is the setting that we have for number 13, a new limited series from Dark Horse.
And wandering through our wasteland is a young amnesiac cyborg who's just looking for his father.
Yes, and again, it seems funny to say it, but it feels like a familiar premise.
It does.
You know, a little bit Johnny Five, a little bit AI, a little bit Pinocchio.
Really?
Maybe.
I suppose. And a young innocent with ridiculous powers looking for this little spot in the world.
Yeah, you thought the powers were ridiculous, though.
Okay, ridiculous might be a little too harsh a word.
A little bit.
I did feel like this comic sometimes stepped out of the realms of science fiction and into extreme suspension of disbelief.
You are talking about the metal leg, aren't you?
I am talking about the metal leg, yeah. At one point, 13 finds a short steel girder and fashions it into a fully articulated prosthesis, which he then attaches to human flesh. It just kind of made me realise that a lot of things in this comic book are not going to be explainable.
Yeah, I know. He throws it together in about 3 seconds.
3 seconds?
Yeah, it is a bit crazy. And it doesn't expect you to, explain that, I suppose. But I'm glad you bring that up, because it does also highlight a scene that I thought was quite important in terms of what's being done here. Because the first person that 13 meets is a young, three-eyed girl named Lorna, who's been captured by an ogre, which has eaten her leg.
In front of her.
Yeah, while she's tied to a stake.
Yes.
So clearly writer David Walker is not shying away from the grotesque in this comic.
Not at all. And it's balanced really well with Robert Love's artwork. There's kind of a fun and a bit of a flamboyant, almost bombastic style that he uses, which makes it easier to kind of deal with the grotesqueness that's being put in there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there are some interesting visual choices.
There is.
For example, the scientist who created 13, when we see him, he looks kind of like Doctor Who in the 70s.
He really does.
Yeah, he's got that kind of look.
Yeah.
Incidentally, though, did you feel it was a little early to be introducing that character?
I did, actually. I mean, this is issue 0 of this series, and we start with 13's search and his quest for his father, and it all gets resolved in the first issue. I feel like it should have been...
Well, it's not resolved. We see
who
his
he
father
is.
at least. Yeah.
I feel like it should have been stretched out. I mean, even just to the beginning of issue number 1
that would have been a nice
nice
way to start issue 1.
That's right, because I felt like I wasn't able to connect with 13. I wasn't able to get a sense of empathy for him throughout.
Yeah, so, I don't know though, right at the start I was really connecting with him. I mean, he finds this skull, picks it up, and he says to it, "Are you my father? Why aren't you talking to me? Are you mad?"
That was quite affecting.
You feel for him in that moment, but then after that, emotionally, all we get from him for the rest of it is either coma patient calm or petulant 5-year-old fury. Just nothing in between.
Nothing in between. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of good ideas and good points in this comic book, but I just feel like some of the plotting decisions were maybe ill-advised.
Yeah, possibly so.
I think it's one of those ones that I'm kind of glad that I read issue number 0, but I probably won't go and look for issue number 1. It is a borrow from me, but it's worth a look for the artwork alone. Yeah,
I tend to agree. I think the artwork was really good. I think there are a few elements in here that do make for a really nice little story, but between the lack of character development that leads to that empathy problem, which you said, and also the familiarity of some of these premises, it just... I don't know, it wasn't all I wanted it to be. So I'm going to give this one a borrow as well, I think.
It's worth a look.
Yeah.
Now, Ray, we haven't looked at American graphic satire yet in the show, have we?
No, we haven't. And given that season 5 of The Venture Brothers is going to be airing in February, I thought we'd take a look at it.
Excellent. Now, is that the only reason we're looking at it this week?
No, I was also tired of having Al outside my window every night trying to infiltrate my subconscious with random and repeated phrases such as "Go Team Venture" and "Release the butterflies" and "Smurfs don't lay eggs, I won't tell you this again, Papa Smurf has a beard. They're mammals.
Ray, did you
I blacked out. What happened?
Venture Brothers.
Hey everyone. The Venture Brothers. The Venture Brothers is an American animated television series that premiered on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim in February 2003. The series mixes action and comedy together while it chronicles the adventures of the Venture family. They are the well-meaning but incompetent teenagers Hank and Dean Venture, their emotionally insecure, ethically challenged, super scientist father Dr. Thaddeus Rusty Venture, and the family's bodyguard, originally the ultra-violent and macho secret agent Brock Samson. Christopher McCullough, otherwise known as Jackson Public, originally conceived the idea as a comic book story for an issue of Monkey Suit. Now, for those unfamiliar with the series, the characters of the Venture Brothers are largely either reimaginings of the characters from Jonny Quest, comic book superheroes and supervillains, or of other famous figures from popular culture.
Now, this is a show more for mature audiences. We wouldn't really recommend it for anyone under 15, I think.
Yeah, but it's not chock full of profanity just for the sake of it. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The content is actually very rich. We as the audience bounce along between, intellectual, farcical, and slapstick humor quite easily, because the world is very free from any rules. Anything that you think could happen usually does. But this is not the kind of humor that, is simply solved with segues a la Family Guy.
It's quite interesting to see the journey of animation over the last kind of few decades.
Yeah.
Where a lot of companies are using a CG animation to really push that level of realism. Venture Brothers is a playful 2D style. You get that comic book element to the animation, lots of bold lines to the characters. I'm a big fan of the design.
Yeah, me too. It's great. There's distinct, clear choices in regards to the character design, and I often marvel at just how the artists can depict these character types with just a few lines put together. My favourite character is the family's self-proclaimed arch-nemesis, the Monarch, a butterfly-themed supervillain. And then, of course, there's Brock. Everyone loves Brock. He usually prefers to use a combat knife, his hands and feet, or even his vintage Dodge Charger rather than firearms. And our man Brock doesn't need an excuse to rip heads off or seduce women. And actually, I don't know which one he would prefer.
Both at the same
given
time.
The yeah?
Yeah.
Hey, baby. I don't even know how that would work.
I don't want to think about that one.
Later in the series, Brock is replaced by reformed supervillain and cured pedophile Sergeant Hatred. His pedophilia is actually controlled by an experimental drug, no molestol, to varying degrees of success.
Now, you can't forget the Venture Brothers, Hank and Dean.
No,
They're
absolutely.
hilarious. Hank is the more adventurous, and Dean is a little bit more timid and a little bit more bookish. The two teenagers often wind up in perilous situations, and as revealed in the second season, have been killed over a dozen times, but replaced with exact clones who have no memory of their own deaths. But I do have a soft spot for Dr. Thaddeus Rusty Venture, who attempts to follow his father's footsteps by becoming a super scientist like his father, but his competence frequently falls short. So, what's your verdict, Ray?
Look, I'm a fan of Adult Swim. I remember watching similar titles such as The Brack Show and C-Lab 2021 and Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Harvey Birdman as well. Aqua Teen Hunger Force is actually the longest running original series on the network. The network also shows lots of anime as well. In 2001 they showed their first, which was Cowboy Bebop. And the Venture Brothers is another fine show. It's a step up in many ways, I think, than these earlier titles. And season 1 is good, but it actually gets better as it goes along. It starts to find more of its voice and more of its rhythm. But that being said, look, I'm on the fence with this one. It doesn't knock me for 6. I'm not bowled over by it. And it's something to do with the writing. It feels very conscious of itself, almost. It's as though it's, really aware of just how clever it is. And it sort of imposes itself, when I'm watching it. And I don't know, it feels like I'm not laughing as much as it wants me to. And don't get me wrong, because there's some hilarious moments, but, I feel like I'm chugging along with a wry smile more than rolling around on the floor. And it could have something to do with the pace, because it's very fast. It's very quick. But, it's because sometimes the punchlines are stacked on top of one another like a cluster bomb of gags. But look, I think it's going to take repeated watches to push me over the edge. But for now, I don't think it's going to be for everyone. I'm going to have to give it a borrow.
A borrow?
Yep.
Fair enough. I would have thought that this was your kind of crazy, though, Ray.
It is. It is,
It
but
is,
it's,
but
yeah, there's something about it. It's not holding me back a little bit at the moment.
I will admit I am a die-hard Venture Brothers fan.
Yeah.
But when I first started watching, it did take a little while for me to kind of click into the humour. And
Maybe that's it.
I think it's like you said, a lot of the gags are stacked on each other, so every time you watch it, you get a different one.
Yeah, right.
But I cannot wait for season 5 to come out. I love it. I love Brock. I love Hank. I love I love them all. So it's definitely a buy from me.
I forgot to mention also, I love how it hasn't been, infiltrated and taken over and destroyed by, the PC virus that's sweeping the world. And I'm not talking about malware either. So, it's great that it doesn't pull any punches when on the big issues.
Yep.
It's like a true satire. It's
Yeah.
great. So that's the Venture Brothers.
A borrow.
What?
Seriously, a borrow. You know what? You and me and a box set. Let's go. Come on, right now.
You're in
Now?
trouble.
Let's go.
Now?
Let's go.
Oh, man.
Bye, Ray. He's so in trouble.
Okay, go on. I know you're dying to say it.
It's aliens.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it
well, probably.
Come on, this is a series about people being abducted by little grey men with big eyes. It's called Saucer Country. It's aliens.
Yeah, but the thing about Saucer Country is that nothing is necessarily going to be what it seems to be. Or maybe it is, but we can't tell.
Just admit to me that it is aliens.
You know what? I'll admit it when the series admits it. This first volume, which is entitled Run, covers the first 6 issues of Saucer Country, and although it provides a multitude of questions, it does not provide us with a single solitary answer.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you that one. Yeah, that is true. The basic setup includes presidential candidate Arcadia Alvarado and her ex-husband, who were abducted by aliens.
Yes. Oh, well, probably they were.
There's also her campaign managers, her security team, and a professor of modern mythology who is frequently visited by the human outlines that they were etched on the Pioneer space probes, Pioneer Couple 10.
Although it's possible he may just be going insane.
Yep.
But probably he isn't. Maybe he is. I really have no idea at all.
No, writer Paul Kernell has really kept his cards close to his chest on this
Yeah.
one, which at the beginning is fantastic because you're really not quite sure what's going on, but you're intrigued. But about 3/4 of the way, halfway through, it just becomes incredibly frustrating. Picture the 3rd season of Lost.
Oh god, yeah, that's when I faded out.
Yeah, me
And
too.
I think, honestly, if you don't let slip any revelations in the first 6 issues,
Yeah.
people are going to start wondering whether this is going to be a one-trick pony if you're holding off because you only have the one twist to give. I mean, it is clear that Cornell has done his research
Oh,
here.
yes.
He knows his business
He
on,
does.
UFO history, UFO theory, the grand ideas.
Yep.
It's all in there, and that's great. But frankly, if you spend all your time on that and not really revealing anything about the personalities of your main characters,
It
well,
starts feeling like you're reading a textbook with pictures.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
pretty much.
speaking of the pictures, see what I did there?
I saw that.
Segue.
Nice segue. Yeah.
The art in this is really very good.
Yeah, look, I think Ryan Kelly has done some quite good work
He has.
here. He really
Yep.
has. There's, he's got some really nice detail work. His framing is great, especially in the sort of misty, half-remembered abduction flashbacks.
Yeah, they're
That's-
really good
yeah.
because we all kind of have an image of what it would be and
There's
how
the
it
established
is.
mythology of it.
And
yeah.
so you get the standards, but there's also a little bit of
He
extra,
twists
a little
it,
bit
yeah,
of a
yeah.
haziness to it as well, which is
Yeah.
kind of cool. He also does some really nice work with perspectives, and the detail work is great, especially in the facial expressions. One thing that I did find a little off-putting was that the beginning of the chapters, they did a whole page spread of a frame from within the book,
Yeah.
and it often spoiled it later in that chapter.
When it showed up in the storyline.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
see it and you're like, oh. And it's lost all of its impact, which it should have had because they're
Yeah.
quite striking
Especially
images.
that one with the alien
Alien
faces over it.
faces.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. It was an odd choice.
Yep.
I don't know if that was the publisher's choice. The creatives may not have been consulted on that one,
right.
but nonetheless, it does lessen the impact of those images
does.
when they show up in the storyline. Look, honestly, there are a lot of great ideas in this series. maybe too many. And if that's possible, but I gotta say, I do feel like Cornell is shortchanging his readers a little bit here. And if I had read this single issue, I probably wouldn't have gotten past number 3. I would have gotten to 3. I would have gone, no, you're not coming to the table.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I can't keep going. So, look, I am going to give this one a borrow. It's not bad, but I found it very disappointing.
Yeah, I got to agree. I was a little disappointed as well. I mean, I'm part of the X-Files generation, so if I'm going to read something about aliens and abduction, I need it to be quite striking and different. And this just didn't quite get to that point. The art in it, like we said, is really, really lovely.
Good, yeah.
The perspectives are really great, but it just becomes frustrating. And it's kind of a bit of a tell that you're getting disappointed with it when you find yourself skimming through conversations, flicking pages forward to see if anything actually happens.
Which is cheating.
Which is cheating, but you just get to a point where you're like, come on, throw me a freaking bone here.
Yeah, I'm the boss. Need the info.
Yes, thank you. I did like most of this, but I think if I got to issue 3, I'd be the same. It just no payoff. I need to have that, not everything laid out, but I need a few answers so the stakes get raised and I feel something for these characters.
Yeah, you get a momentum because there's these points.
There's these points of reference. Debunk them later, I don't care, but give me something.
Yeah.
It's a borrow from me as well. If you're into extraterrestrial theory, you'll love it. It's great, but I don't know.
If you're wanting a story that's going to drag you along, maybe not so much.
Maybe not so much. Check it out, though. Give it a try.
I think pretty much everyone has wondered at one point or another whether they would have been different if things had been different. You know, if you'd been born somewhere else, if you'd been raised by different people, if you'd had a different life, would you be a completely different person?
Well, it's the whole nature versus nurture debate.
Sure.
And in his series Clone, writer David Schulner seems to come right into the nurture side of the argument.
Yeah, well, honestly, I don't know if that was his aim when he was writing this, but I agree. That's what comes across, and it is one of the factors that really makes this comic stand out to me.
It does. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, Clone tells the story of Luke Taylor, an unassuming guy, regular guy, an expectant father, who is about to kind of have a crash course on nature versus nurture when he comes face to face with an exact copy of himself in his kitchen, bleeding out from a gunshot wound.
Yeah, and then of course the copy admits that his name is Foster.
Foss.
And he clearly has a completely different personality from Luke.
Yeah, Foss is funny.
I was hooked at that moment, you know? Immediately I was like, okay, I want to know more. Then we find out that there's another copy whose name is Patrick, who's about to kidnap Luke's pregnant wife, Amelia.
Yeah, there's a hell of a lot going on in this first issue, within the first kind of couple of pages of it. And it's brilliant because it pulls you off balance and it makes you kind of go, what? You feel like Luke, really.
Yeah, there's the number of questions that start flying around in your head. I mean, why does Patrick want Amelia? Does it have something to do with the baby? How many clones are there anyway? Is Luke the original, or is he just another clone? And probably the most important question, what the hell is going on?
Now, Al, I know that you love information being withheld from you
Yes, I do.
in comics and kind of being drip-fed, so you must have really loved this.
Well, the funny thing is, it wasn't until I'd had a bit of time to think about it that I really started appreciating it. Really? I mean, honestly, I had to come back and have another read, and that's when I started really loving it. This comic's definitely a grower.
Interesting, because, I mean, I was hooked within the first couple of pages. I loved it.
Right, well, maybe I'm just dim then.
Maybe.
You know what? Maybe you should just talk about the art.
Yeah, maybe I will. Now, the art is done by Juan Jose Rip, and he does such a beautiful job with these regular people. I know that sounds a bit unimpressive, but it's really honest and truthful characters that are in here. That they all have their flaws, they all look normal, which is great. But he also has this dab hand with the macabre.
Well, yeah, and anybody who's familiar with Rip's work will probably agree with me on this one, that he's the guy you go to if you want somebody who can draw a really good gut wound. Or, you know, a hallway covered in blood. He really knows what he's doing there. But also, his backgrounds are also impressively detailed.
Yeah, there is a lot going on in the backgrounds that I didn't see the first time around. It was a couple of times flicking through. It's like,
second read, this is what I'm saying.
I still liked it straight away. If I have one tiny little criticism, it's that sometimes I feel that the colour palette is a little inconsistent.
Yeah, look, I think I think Felix Serrano may have made a couple of missteps there. I don't have a problem with the overall colour palette.
No, it's really lovely.
No, I think it's well chosen. But there are some inconsistencies, as you say, even mid-scene.
Yeah, I don't know whether it was a conscious decision on Serrano's part.
Well, if it is, I don't think it lands.
Yeah, when the temperature of the tone kind of drops mid-scene and nothing's kind of indicated that, you know, someone's turned a light on or the clouds kind of moved across the sun, it's a little bit jarring and it kind of pulls you away from what's going on.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's such a tiny criticism against the rest of this book.
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, I think this ticks all the boxes you want ticked for a first issue, you know?
Yeah.
And that's even more impressive when you consider this is Schulner's first attempt at a comic.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's pretty impressive in by itself.
Yeah.
So this one is definitely a buy for me.
Yeah, it is quite an impressive debut. Like, I was amazed when I read in the back that this was his first comic book. It's a very intriguing, action-packed, and heavily layered story.
Yeah.
And honestly, if the series continues with the strength that issue number 1 has, I will put up my hand and I will say that I think there's another hit series here. Like, I really enjoyed it. It's definitely a buy from me as well.
Oh, you're putting up your hand?
I'm putting up my hand.
I'll get Image on the phone.
Okay.
You can let them know.
I'll let them know.
Okay, guys, well, that is all we have time for today.
Indeed.
But we will be back next week
No,
to look at...
no. Competition, Al.
Oh,
competition.
Good point.
Is it a pony?
No, I told you it's not a pony. It is a love sack.
That's right, guys. We are
Yes.
giving away either a game sack, a player sack, or a pillow sack.
Awesome. All of which, incidentally, are obscenely comfortable.
Yes, they are. Now, entry is really easy, guys. All you need to do is take a photo of where you would put your love sack or which piece of furniture you're going to replace it with and send it to us on Facebook or Twitter.
There will be extra points for being creative with this, so
Absolutely.
possibly give us a bit of a laugh. You've got a better chance of winning.
Absolutely, you do. Now, unfortunately, guys, it is only open to our Australian viewers this time.
Yeah, now, also, you have until the 16th to get your entry in.
Yep.
We'll be announcing it on the 21st.
Ready for Christmas.
If you are indeed stupid enough to give it away. But you had that option.
That's right. But that's all we have time for this week, guys. But we will be back for more Kapow time next week.
That's not going to come off.
Yeah, it's on a piece of sticky tape.
Oh.
It's fine.